visited Arizona this past weekend. I had several things on my agenda. One of them was visiting my best friend. She graduated from college. Congratulations, Bianca. Um, and the second thing was visiting my mother for Mother's Day. And I'm packing up my car yesterday. I'm on my way back to San Diego. And she is like helping me put stuff in my car. And she's like, "Did you know that you had a drink in your car?" And I'm thinking like I had like a water or something. And she pulls out this Jones specialty drink that's been sitting in my car since March when Joel gave it to me. And it's kind of the worst flavor, so I'm kind of sad that she like found it. It could have stayed there forever and I would have been happy because it's orange chocolate soda flavor. But let's try it. It honestly tastes like a Tootsie Roll. It doesn't taste like orange at all.
That's interesting. I was thinking it was going to taste like a chocolate orange from Trader Joe's.
No, and now on the second taste, it kind of tastes like one of those little, those little oranges that you get around the holidays.
That's what I'm saying.
That like are
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I didn't think those came from Trader Joe's.
Well, they sell them sometimes. I don't think it's their brand.
Yeah. What are you drinking this week?
We're just hopping right into it, I see.
Yeah.
Well, this is a drink that has not been sitting in my car, aging for a couple of months. This is oh God, I should have brought the bottle with me. Fedderson's Fever Tree mixer. It is sparkling lime and yuzu soda. I typically like both of those flavors, so I am excited to sample this bad boy. It's giving Tootsie Roll.
Are we both drinking Tootsie Roll drinks today?
No, I'm being facetious. I don't like it. It's kind of just like sparkling water that's lime flavored. It's not really soda. It's almost just like tonic. It's not even good tonic. Like it's very light, like almost like diet tonic. I'm not a fan. Come on, Fever Tree. That's why I called you Feddersons. I couldn't even remember you. You were so forgettable last time. Step up your game, okay?
Wait, I'm confused. How can it be diet tonic? Does it just taste like diet corn? What do you call it? Quinine?
I don't know. They sell at the grocery store. It's half the calories, which is weird because I don't think normal tonic water has a lot of calories. Welcome back to Why Will No One Date Dr. Fever Tree? It's because he's putting out substandard products. I'm putting out a substandard podcast. I want to date these guys. I'm Joel Guy.
I'm Naomi Guy.
And we're a podcast that when we are talking about stuff 3.5 minutes into our episode, it's sex, it's dating, it's relationships. It sounds like this episode is going to be all three of those at once.
Woo! Yeah! Joel, before we get into this episode, tell me a news article that you found.
Damn, really spoiling it. Yeah, so Naomi does have a book report, and I did find this news article today that I thought was kind of funny. I believe as we're dropping episodes, our prior episode was episode 161, which was an update on dating apps. And I'm really disappointed I didn't find this because this seems very relevant. So this is an article from The Cut, written by Daniel Cohen, published on... it does not want to give me a date this article came out. It was updated today, so that's something. I think we'll find out very quickly why it was updated today at 5:42 p.m. So the article is titled, Bumble's Anti-Celibacy Campaign is Not Going Over Well. And the reason that struck my eye is, one, it's dating apps. Two, our episode is discussing the opposite of anti-celibacy, or the opposite of celibacy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean. Boy, it's been a long day at work. I'm not ready to record. And three, I just thought it was incredibly funny. So the article says, lately Bumble has been making some big changes. After a new CEO, Lydia Jones, took over in January, the company recruited Barry Keoghan to thirst trap potential swipers into submission, and finally ditched its founding premise of making women message men first. There's now a new feature, which seems very stupid to me, where women can write prompts on their profiles, and guys can respond first to that profile, which kind of defeats the whole purpose of
Bumble.
But the app's rebrand appears to have hit a new snag. An anti celibacy ad campaign has ticked off a lot of potential customers. 2 weeks ago, Bumble rolled out a commercial that showed a woman attempting to swear off dating and to become a nun, only to abandon her convent after drooling over a sexy shirtless gardener and receiving an illicit phone loaded with a Bumble app. We've changed so you don't have to, an overlay text reads, presumably referring to a slate of new features the app is rolling out alongside its new opening move pivot. Shortly after the commercial aired, a handful of billboards popped up around LA with taglines such as, "You know full well a vow of celibacy is not the answer." So it's believed that this Bumble campaign is a response to the increasing conversation around voluntary celibacy. This is a popular TikTok hashtag. Many of the people who are practicing this are young women who say that they are voluntarily celibate because they're just so pissed off with dating culture. Dating apps with their gamified format, questionable background checking practices, and rampant harassment have been criticized as part of the problem. And though Bumble originally claimed to set itself aside by empowering women to make the first move, it's never been clear how lived experiences on the app are that different from, say, Tinder or Hinge. The new billboards, which dismiss a decision that many women say made them feel safer and more powerful, are not doing the supposedly feminist dating app any favors. A spokesperson from Bumble responded to the backlash, which was a lot of posts on social media making fun of this. "We have heard the concerns shared about the ad's language and understand that rather than highlighting a current sentiment towards dating, it may have had a negative impact on some of our community. This was not our intention, and we are in the process of removing it from a marketing campaign." So I think the reason I found this article today was because I also saw the announcement that they're taking down all these billboards after people have just made fun of them relentlessly on social media.
I wonder how much it costs to put up a billboard / take it down.
That's a good question. Anyways, reason I thought that was interesting is Bumble is trying to be cool and hip and, figure out where the kids are and come up with new marketing campaigns. And I'm going to go on a limb and say the person who came up with that marketing campaign was not a woman.
It's definitely a man.
Off base. But, given that so many women are like, I feel terrified about dating and I no longer want to date because I don't feel comfortable spending all this time and energy only to find creepy men. It seems that a woman might have nixed this early in the process and been like, this feels tone deaf, like a bad conversation. It's sort of like how there was a anti-domestic violence hashtag going around Twitter a couple of years ago. It was like hashtag why I left. No, it was hashtag why I stayed. And it was explaining why women had stuck around even in domestic violence situations. And Domino's hopped on this and they were like, why I stayed? Because he got hot and ready Domino's right to our door. Because they didn't do any of the research beforehand about why people were using this hashtag.
Oh my god. It just takes 5 minutes of background. It doesn't take that long.
Yeah, that feels like something your teenage social media intern should have caught, in the rough drafts. Anyways, that is the news I wanted to share, and I feel that sets us up nicely for what we're going to talk about for the majority of the episode, your incredible book.
So, party people, I read More, a Memoir of Open Marriage by Molly Roden Winter. And I wanted to originally read this book because I saw an op-ed on it in the New York Times. I don't subscribe to New York Times, but I follow them on social media. And I was kind of confused by the content of what this was going to be, because when reading the op-ed, or it was kind of an excerpt from the book, it was talking about how her son had found out about her non-monogamous marriage and how she kind of went about the conversation with her son moving forward. So I was kind of interested in it just because I think that it's not something that is normally talked about in society. And especially now we have, this culture of swingers and ethical non-monogamous relationships and so on and so forth. And we don't really hear about the nitty gritty other than Instagram comments. I don't know about you, but every so often I get these things that pop up on my For You page that are along the lines of, is your husband picking his girlfriend or you to take to bed tonight? And she's like, oh, my husband, while doing a TikTok dance, is like, my husband's taking his girlfriend to bed. This
Interesting.
happens. It
Okay.
comes up on my For You page. It'll come up on yours too, now that I mentioned it. But I really just want to jump in and first ask Joel, what is your understanding of ethical non-monogamy um, today?
So
Before
I do
we,
just want to clarify something for our listeners who may not be familiar. This is a memoir of like a woman's journey into polygamy over a period
no,
of what, like a decade?
no,
No.
no. This is a book that is describing, and if you don't feel my freaking thunder, this is talking about an ethical non monogamous relationship that a woman has with her husband.
Okay, well, I just misused the word polygamy because that's what I meant. But you're
Yes,
right, that is not the right term I was looking for.
it's
So,
polyamorous.
yes, thank you. So to answer your question, I'm tangentially aware that there is a rising discussion about polyamory in our culture. I think the mistake a lot of people make is they kind of lump in a lot of different things to one pot. And arguably, I just did that when I referred to it as polygamy and not polyamory.
Hmm.
Poly, of course, meaning many, amory meaning love, many lovers, practice of many lovers. I did Latin in middle school. I don't know if you can tell
Wow.
with these incredible insights I'm offering. But yeah, I understand it. More and more people are saying that they're open to polygamy. Oh boy, polyamory on dating apps, i.e., ethical non-monogamy. The interesting thing is that can be really close emotional friendships, which some people consider emotional cheating. It can be having sex with other people, but not spending the night or doing anything outside of that. And then even having like a full live-in boyfriend who the woman is having sex with, who lives in the spare bedroom. So there's like a whole range of practices and behaviors that are encompassed within polyamory, and I think part of the problem with discussing it culturally is that when you talk about it, people are going to have completely different ideas of what you're talking about. And I do wonder if what, a lot of people are describing when they say, yeah, I'm okay with polyamory, is this idea of, close personal attachments or, just casual sex, not what some people do, which is the whole like, hey, I have a boyfriend, you have a girlfriend, we're married, they don't actually interact, but we all, live together as some kind of like crazy polycule.
Hmm. So, I would definitely agree with everything that you're saying. A lot of people don't have a complete understanding, and I feel like even the people in the poly community don't have a full understanding of what polyamory is. And I say that because I'm taking directly from the book here. And this is kind of out of order, but it'll make sense once I'm in it. She meets with this man who is also identifies as a polyamorous lover, and kind of picks his brain about it because he has been polyamorous for longer than she has. And he says polyamory is still very misunderstood. Even the poly community can't agree on what it is. And she says, really? Because I certainly could use a tutorial. And Liam doesn't exactly laugh. Liam is the man who is explaining these things to her.
This feels like a made up anecdote for a book, if I can just say.
Let
I'm
me
going to remember
read.
this conversation. I'm going to tape record what you say so I can
Joel,
use it in a future
Joel,
book.
do I ridicule your book clubs? No.
You're right. You're right. I'm being prickly.
um, Liam doesn't exactly laugh. It's more like a zen smile that evokes a sense of laughter. In that case, I'm your guy. My mother was poly, and I was raised in a poly commune in Northern California. He adds unnecessarily. Wow. Wow, my parents were in an open marriage too, but they won't even use that term. My mom said she had an affair with my father's blessing. Uh-huh, he says. He must be the first person I've met who's unfazed by this disclosure. People can get really hung up on the language, you know? Like some purists don't consider open marriage to be polyamory at all. They think it's hierarchical since spouses are automatically primary and other partners are secondary or whatever. And she asks, "What about you?" And he says, "I'm solo poly." And she asks, "What does that mean?" It means I'm my own primary relationship, so I don't intend on getting married or even have my romantic relationships to last forever. But that doesn't mean I don't take relationships seriously. It's like having more than one close friend. People love those friends, but they don't need a legal document forcing them to commit to their friends for life. And nobody would say, I can't believe you've been seeing other friends. You know what I mean? So he kind of explains it in the sense that, like, there's not a firm definition of what polyamory is. It's kind of specific to, there's not enough terms to describe different forms of polyamory. So he kind of uses it as this, like, catch all kind of term, and explains it as this, it can mean different things to different people.
I don't like his phrase solo poly. You're single,
No,
dude. You don't
I
get ladies. We get it.
no, I think it's interesting because, like I mentioned, there's not like one term for this sort of thing. So you can, like,
Yeah.
he could just say, "Oh, I am polyamorous in my relationships," but it's interesting to say solo poly as, like, he's like, "Okay, I'm the only one that I'm going to be, completely faithful to and for, like, with forever," which is kind of like saying you're just never going to get serious with someone. So that's my understanding of it. But if he wants to define it that way, that's fine.
I don't want to be too much
Um,
of a jerk. I think it's similar to someone identifying as bisexual, but like being in a relationship with an opposite sex partner, right? Like you can have an identity and have a relationship that's not all encompassing of that identity. I understand that. Um, but yeah, it's interesting to me that, to my knowledge, and I did do a little bit of research before this episode, like I could not find, just a solid, consistent definition of polygamy or a breakdown of it. And I'm sure they're out there, but it's interesting, as
polyamory, you
much.
keep saying
Oh,
polygamy.
yeah, you're right. You're right. This is like that episode we did on Silver Linings Playbook where I kept mixing up Robert De Niro and Robert Downey Jr. And you were like, "Wait, Robert Downey Jr. was in this movie? Iron Man was in this movie? Incredible!" But yeah, it's baffling to me because, as someone who is very familiar with like Tumblr culture and like all these discussions of queer identity that arose and kind of became solidified. Admittedly, this was going on long before Tumblr existed, but there was a lot of discourse that kind of like nailed down the internet's conception of different types of sexuality throughout the like 2000s, early 2010s era. And the fact that they haven't been able to like codify and like break down the different parts of polyamory is fascinating to me. And I wonder if it's just because it's been like this very like private closed doors thing that even like people who are firm advocates of it don't really want to talk and publicly identify with.
Hmm. That could be it.
Because I think to a certain extent, like while our culture is a little more accepting of, the concept of, marriages not being between one cis white man and one cis white woman, there's still, I think, a stigma attached to people who sleep around. And there's always that awkward thing when you run into someone and they're like, "Oh, well, I'm in an open relationship." You're like, "Are you? Should I call your wife? Should I like figure out if this is like actually something?" Because you're not sure, what's the appropriate thing to do there. Are you supposed to explain to, someone you're going out with that, actually I'm seeing someone already, or, I've got a side piece or whatever, the terms are. And I think there's a social stigma because, we are still in many ways a puritanical society where, major public figures are shunned from, revealing that they've had, relationships with multiple people simultaneously. Even if there's consent involved in all ways, you'll be labeled a cheater or, just a sleazy individual who's, playing people off each other. So yeah, I have to wonder, if there's that. But then it could also just be the simple fact that like some people just might not find polyamory appealing and it only fits a subset of individuals, and that the reason it hasn't kind of broken through culturally is just because a lot of people would feel insecure, feel difficulty balancing all these different relationships and figuring out how to give enough attention to one person or another.
That's my biggest thing with it is, like, I don't see myself in a relationship like this just because if you're an adult, you're working 40 hours a week, you potentially have kids. Like Molly shares that she has two young boys that she's raising. She has her relationship with her husband to attend to. She has the relationships with her kids to attend to. She has the relationship with herself to attend to. And then she's actively dating other people. And so it's like, how do you have enough hours in the day to get through this and not pull your hair out? Because you're dealing with the drama of your family, you're dealing with the drama of yourself, you're dealing with the drama of your friends, you're dealing with the drama of your husband. And then on top of that, you're dealing with the drama of these other people in your life. So it's just, it feels like too much and too many people too close, but that could just be me. Moving
I want to throw in
forward,
some. No, I do want to throw something in here because while I was doing some research, because I wanted to sort of understand this prior to our episode. One interesting thing I kept seeing talked about with this book, and I don't know really the content of the book. I just know how other people have talked about it. Is there's a lot of people who were like, polyamory, that's just a rich person thing. That's just the rich people having fun, and they have the resources to do all of this. And I think there's some truth to that, where like if you're not working a 40-hour week, like you're a stay-at-home wife or a stay-at-home husband or independently wealthy because of inheritances, whatever you want to say, it's much easier to fit this into your schedule. It's much easier to go out on multiple dates a week. It's much easier to meet someone up for sex in the middle of your workday, right? But I think that's a puritanical way of being like, oh, the elites, they do this and it's gross and disgusting, right? It's a way of like shutting down like what seems to be a very genuine desire of certain people to have relationships that encompass more than just one partner. But also it ignores the fact that like I did a little research and there's a decent number of poor disabled people who are in polyamorous relationships too, right? Just because it's easier to be polyamorous when you're in a wealthy family doesn't mean you can't accomplish it at a small level as well. And I think for many people, having 3 or more individuals in a group makes it much easier to pool the resources they need to survive, right? The way we treat disabled people in this country is just mind-boggling. There's limitations on assets, there's limitations on travel. There's so little in terms of accessibility across the United States. It gets worse every single year. Having other people who can support you is good. Having more people is better. And so, like, I think it's really important that we say, before we deep dive into this topic, big proponent, I think we can say both of us, but we're big proponents of, the idea that people should be allowed to, pursue what they want and, be happy. And anyone who's reading this and being like, well, this doesn't apply to me. This is just a rich lady complaining about her problems. Yeah, in this specific instance, maybe that's the case. But like polyamory is a very real thing for a lot of people. And you should consider, why it is that certain people pursue this and how, valid their feelings are compared to, someone who says I'm asexual or I'm gay or I'm pansexual, demisexual, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
I think those are all good points, and we're going to touch on all of it. So
Oh,
let's
okay.
hop right
I'll
in.
shut up for the rest of the episode.
Just for the reason of this for the reason of this episode, I'm going to use the definition: ethical non-monogamy is a relationship between two people that they are their primary relationship, and then they have other secondary relationships um, in the process of being polyamorous. So this is ethical non-monogamy. Her and her husband are in an ethical non-monogamous relationship where they are each other's primaries. So they will not break up with their husband or wife in order to be with their secondary and make them the new primary. So this is purely side relationships that are happening on a primary relationship. So I started this book and I kind of cringed my way through the first couple chapters. I got it on the first day that I started reading it the first day that I got it, and I had to put it down for several weeks. I was having an issue with it. And it's just because of I think my own understanding of monogamy, and I kind of put it down at like the pivotal point where it was kind of like starting to turn some wheels in my head. So, I am at the point in the first like 4 chapters or so, at the point in the when I stopped where things were getting dicey and she was not being fully truthful or a husband, and I was like, you're just cheating on him, like let's just talk about that. And I think like as the book goes on, it's as a whole it's a really great book because it helps the understanding of who she is and her boundaries and relationships, and it helps her relationship with her husband grow stronger. Personally, I wouldn't publish this book because she goes really deep into the nitty-gritty of her sex life, and she mentioned she has 2 sons. So I just wouldn't want like my son in the future picking this up and be like, "Oh, mom was bent over her desk at the common workplace."
I'm more of a G spot orgasm kind of girl, not a clit orgasm kind of girl. And my husband just terrible at sex all around. Oh, tiniest dick you ever saw.
She also talks about that where like she'll go into the description of like their sex life, and she's like, well, he's not like we kind of got, boring in bed over the years, and he like likes to call me like yell out cunt while he's like orgasming, and she like has to like tell him to not do it, and he'll only do it like on special occasions or something. Or it was like cunt or bitch or something like that. It was just something that was like super repulsive to hear after like while you're also orgasming or having sex with your partner. So yeah. So she also like compares her lovers to her husband, and it's like it's a whole big thing. Things I wouldn't talk about in my book, but it's not my book.
Yeah.
So I followed her, or I didn't follow her. I stalked her Instagram after finishing the book, and she's still with her husband. They just celebrated 25 years of marriage. So something he must have not read the book. That's all I'm saying.
Well, I mean, I think we sort of discussed this when you mentioned on an episode, maybe one of our media catch up episodes, that you were reading this. And like, it kind of feels that she has an exhibitionisty humiliation kink of some kind, just publicly blasting all this out. And to a
Maybe.
certain extent, like if the husband was okay with it, it almost feels like he has a humiliation kink too, where he's like, yeah, I'm a terrible lover, say more things about how tiny my dick is and how weird my sex game is. um but yeah, like, it's kind of like celebrity tell-all memoirs where like the celebrity gives like a bunch of juicy graphic details about their life. It's just like, I was such a mess, I was high on, cocaine and Adderall, and I was drinking, the jungle juice for every meal, and I was not even taking my multivitamins like a good Disney princess girl. And you're just like, why are you writing this? And it's like, oh, I want to cash in, right? I'm fading out of relevance, I
Yeah.
want people to remember my name, even if it's like gross voyeuristic stuff, like it's still a way that I can, be popular. Bad publicity is still publicity at the end of the day. So yeah, I mean, I just can't shake from the back of my mind that like bad stuff happened in her marriage. Things were seriously rocked, her relationship with her husband and her kids. And the way to kind of get out of this is like, hey, hubby, do you want to make a lot of money with this like super weird book I'm going to publish?
I don't think that things were rocked in the sense that it was originally expected. So I'm just gonna go straight into the summary of
Okay,
the
yeah.
book. Basically, starts off and she explains that she um before she got married, she was engaged to her now husband, and he essentially said, like, asked her how many like former sexual partners he had had, and they shared that information with each other. He shared as well, and he said, "Well, in 10 years, you're probably going to come up to me and be like, well, I'm kind of bored of this, and we can talk about opening up the marriage." So it was a very interesting. Like he knew that this was kind of coming, and so, sure enough, 9, 10 years into their marriage, she's sitting and she gets in this fight with her husband. And he came home late again one night from work, and she's annoyed because she put the kids to bed and he had promised he had been would be home early to eat dinner with everyone. And she gets mad and she just walks out of the house and goes and ends up meeting up with one of her friends at a bar and meets this guy, and his name is Matt, and she instantly had this like physical connection to him, and she didn't act on it, but she liked being flirted with, and she liked that someone was attracted to her even though she was a mother. Like she saw herself as this like grotesque on like person that didn't necessarily deserve to feel sexy or loved or things of that nature. So she meets Matt, and she gets home and she starts like talking about this guy, and he's like, oh well, with her husband, and he's like, oh well, as long as you tell me everything that happens, like I'm totally okay with everything that happens, and like you can like go on a date with him, and like you can even sleep with him. And so she's like kind of confused by this, but she ends up sleeping like with the guy, and they continue a flirtatious relationship, and he's also in a relationship, but it's not ethical non-monogamy. It's just he's cheating on his girlfriend with Molly. And every day when she
Sorry,
like
he's cheating on his girlfriend with the recreational drug Molly, or the person running the book Molly?
the person writing the book,
Okay,
sorry, I'll
okay.
call her Miss Winters from now on. So she is going about her life sleeping with this other guy every so often, and he goes through the like crisis of, oh well, we'll have sex every so often, and then he'll have a crisis after they sleep together. I cheated on my girlfriend again, blah blah blah, and they won't talk for a while, and then they'll go through the cycle again whenever he's ready. But he doesn't know that she is like in an ethical non-monogamous relationship. He's assuming that she is also cheating on her husband. And so she goes home after she sleeps with the guy and she's like, oh, well, this is what we did in bed. And then like her and her husband like use him kind of like a pawn in their like sexual experiences. Like, oh, did you like, I'm going to be really grotesque here. So close your ears if you don't like this. But, oh, did you like, this is how I sucked his dick. And like, this is like what I did with him in bed. And like, this is how he kissed me and blah, blah, blah. So it's
I
like,
did that
it's,
thing in Cosmopolitan where I just took out half a grapefruit. You know what I'm talking about.
ew. So it's a very interesting dynamic that her and her husband have, but she's sexually exhilarated. So she's happy about it. And so she ends up going out of town for a weekend to visit her mother, and her husband's like, "Hey, my ex-girlfriend just broke up with her boyfriend and needs some consoling. Do you mind if I go over there?" And she's like, "Yeah, for sure. Do whatever you need to do. Like she was at our wedding, she's your friend." And he's like, "Well, can I sleep with her?" And she's like, "Yeah, I guess. Like, that's fine." And doesn't like, she's not, you know how in consent in sexual situations, actually in all consent, it has to be like excited yes. Like, "Yeah, do that." She was kind of like, "Yeah, I guess so. Like, I'm sleeping with this other guy. I guess you can sleep with her." And it's kind of like interesting to me because there's no communication at the beginning. There's absolutely none.
Excellent.
The entire weekend that she's gone at her mother's, she's like thinking about him sleeping with his ex girlfriend, and oh, is she better than me in bed, and picturing it the entire time. And she gets home and she's hoping that he didn't sleep with the ex girlfriend. And she kind of asks him, like, "Hey," in a roundabout way, "did you sleep with her?" And he's like, "Yeah, I did. You told me I could." And they get in this giant fight about, you know, "You're sleeping with somebody else so I can sleep with somebody else," and blah 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 blah. And at this point I'm like, oh my god, this is grounds for divorce. Like, you guys have both slept with other people. It's obviously not like a good like communication. Things are going very badly. It's just and nothing had been talked about in the sense of, we are going to have an open relationship, we're going to, these are the ground rules, this is what's going on. And in the whole process, she's with this other guy and she's lying to her husband about like what they're doing and when they're doing it and blah blah blah. And so she feels guilty, and it's literally all she can think about. So there comes a point where she meets up with this guy Matt again, and he comes over to her house and they're having sex in her guest bedroom, and she like runs out of the guest bedroom after she had sex with her side piece, her boyfriend Matt, and runs to the kitchen and texts her husband really quick and is like, "Matt's over here, but he is not nearly the lover you are," and accidentally sends that message to Matt.
Brilliant.
And
Brilliant.
Matt gets it while he's still in the guest room. And so she's like, Matt's freaking out. He's like, "I thought we were both cheating on like our significant others, and you told me one thing." And she's like, "I never said that I was cheating on my husband. You just assumed that I was cheating on my husband." And he's like, "I can't like
This
be this."
relationship was built on trust. The trust that you were violating the trust of another person. How dare you destroy the sacred bond we had?
Yeah, and so like she's like, "Oh my god, like this sucks, but like we didn't like talk about this at all." And he's like, "Okay, whatever. I can't be this person for you anymore. Bye." So that ends their relationship, and she's like heartbroken. So she goes to her husband for comfort, and she's like, "Please just like hold me and tell me what to do. Like, my boyfriend just broke up with me." And I'm like, "What the hell?" Like, I'm like, "This is your
This is
boyfriend and
a
your husband."
fetish
I'm
thing.
like, and I'm like, "You're going to your husband for breakup advice with your boyfriend." And I'm like, at this point, I just put down the book, and I'm like, I can't read this anymore.
Okay,
They're
okay, okay.
on the
Let's
brink of
for a
divorce.
second.
I'm done with it. Like, this is where I put it down. But then I picked it back up a couple weeks later. Go for it.
We say this in pretty much every episode, and this is a really good example of the importance of communication. Um, it's also, I think, a good example that, in my opinion, I'm not saying this can't work else in other situations, but in my opinion, ethical non-monogamy only works if both partners have exactly the same freedoms and understandings of the situation and arrangement. Like, one shouldn't feel like they have less permission to do things than the other, because I feel that's what breeds resentment. And it's baffling to me that she thought like it worked one way but not the other. And part of that might have stemmed from just bad communication. But also, I'm thinking this entire time, I'm like, is this really a problem with like her needing like a change in the relationship, or is it like she just needs like a Pornhub subscription? Like, what is she getting out of this relationship if it's not like decent sex? Is it just different? And I like understand to a certain extent that like dopamine is a pleasure chemical. It's a chemical that gets released when you do novel things. That's not to say it can't be released, but like the biggest spurts are when you do new stuff. And that's why when someone's taking drugs, the best time is frequently the first time they have that drug. And you kind of have diminishing turns over time as your body adapts to it. Similarly, you might have a favorite song, and the first time you listen to it, you're like, "Holy crap, I love this!" And then 3 months later, if you've been playing it on repeat, you're like, "This is not my favorite anymore." And in the same way, I'm like, okay, I can sort of understand that like someone gets tired of their marriage after 10 years to like, I want to change of pace. But then it just seems like, hey, I think I need to talk to my partner and figure out, what we're doing wrong. Or, this is a good intervention point for couples therapy where it's like both of us feel as though there's something missing. How do we like re-inject that spark of dopamine back in? Or I don't know, hire an escort. Like obviously they're not legal everywhere, but like so many problems could be solved if it was just money changing hands rather than like long-term emotional connections. And if it's long-term emotional connections you need, join a book club, man. Go to Pilates class. Obviously, I'm simplifying so much. I get it. These are awkward, uncomfortable relationships, especially because we don't have the language to properly describe them. It's maybe a little unfair to expect that people can set appropriate boundaries in all of these situations, but boy, it just really sounds like she is not handling her like midlife crisis in a mature way. And perhaps that's, silly to say because that's the whole reason this book was written. It wouldn't be like, I had a happy and healthy polyamorous relationship and everything worked great and my kids respect me and my husband loves me. 10 out of 10. Would recommend.
See, that's my issue with it as well, because I will consume media, and if it's really bad, I will take on the feelings of the people that are in it. And
Yeah.
so, like, I
That's
get to
called
the point where
empathy, Naomi.
I'm
It's
sitting there.
weird neurons. Your brain sees someone in pain, and you're like, I feel like I would be in that pain. That's how we succeed as a species.
No, but I get to the point where I'm sitting there and I'm reading this book and I'm like, I feel like I'm cheating on my significant other, even though I am not. That's how bad this book got me. So I was sitting here and I'm reading these first couple chapters. And I'm like, what is going on? I'm cheating on my boyfriend and this is awful. And I can't keep reading this book. It was not a good experience. But I really want to touch on jealousy and therapy and opening the relationship in general, because those are big topics, and I want to touch on them because, like I mentioned in the first couple of chapters, she was struggling with the idea of her husband also like sleeping with other women, and she discusses this very openly where she struggled with this for years. She struggled with this for over 10 years, and then she got to the point where she was like, okay, like I can sit with this. He's obviously getting what he needs from somebody else. He's not going to leave me for other people. But it took a really long time to come to terms with that. And to me, in this sort of relationship, it's hard for me to understand why you would open up the relationship in the first place if you're not comfortable. Why would you go and sleep with Matt in the first place if you're not comfortable with your husband sleeping with other people? Why would you start this without having fucking conversations in the first place?
Yeah.
It baffles my mind.
I
But
two. Sorry.
yeah, go
Don't let
ahead.
me interrupt.
No, go ahead.
Okay. Well, the first thing is this all seems very logical to me. I think we're on the same level that, this woman made a lot of decisions. I do, to a certain extent, feel like we're kind of like Christian conservatives in the 1980s being like, why don't the inner city youth just stop using drugs? Right? Like I prayed away my alcoholism using the power of, Jesus. Why can't they just do the same? Why don't they, pull themselves up by the bootstraps and get a job? Right? It's just that easy. Like to a certain extent, we're like, steamrollering over the complicated relationships that people have and the psychological perspectives that influence the decisions they make and how they feel, and we're obviously even presuming that everyone in this story is in a solid mentally healthy frame of mind and like they're not dealing with trauma and problems of their past or and whatnot. I do have to wonder, and this is just a minor point, Does this woman work, or is she completely reliant upon her husband?
That's a good question. So she is a stay-at-home mom at the beginning of the book, and then this kind of I'm going to answer your question while moving into the next
Sure.
topic, which is therapy. Um, After her breakup with Matt, she decides that she's going to go to therapy by herself, not with her partner, but by herself. And she starts to seek out why she decided that she was going to have sex with other people and why she had issues with the jealousy and so on and so forth. So she, um, over the course of several years, finds out that her as a single mom working at home is not the best, not working from home, but working at home as a mother um, was not the best way to continue her identity as an individual. And she struggles a lot with the idea of who am I after having these two kids and being married for 10 years and having this random affair type thing with this random young man. And struggles with the identity of who am I as a mother, who am I as a wife, who am I as a daughter, and so on and so forth. And discusses this at length with her therapist individually. And it takes a lot for her to understand that part of the reason why she is exploring ethical non-monogamy is because she doesn't necessarily like didn't know fully who she was before, and she's finding out who she is through dating other people, which is completely understandable because when you date other people you find out things about yourself, you find out boundaries, you find out what your likes, your dislikes of yourself and others, and it's an interesting way to continue your self-realization process. And so I think that this was helpful in her understanding her identity as a person. I'm not saying it'll work for everyone, but it was
Sure.
an interesting way for her to go about this process.
Okay. I don't want to be rude, and again, I totally want to reiterate this idea. Maybe this works specifically for her, and like it's silly to steamroller all the ambiguity out of the conversation. That said, if I wanted to explore who I was as a person, in my mind, the first step would not be going and dating and having sex with other people. And there's a couple of reasons for that. I mean, one of them is just like I'd probably want to read some books about, different things I could do in my life. I'd probably want to talk to like a career consultant about, jobs that might make me happy. I might want to, go back to school and get a degree in an area of study that I'm passionate about. I might take up a hobby, like needlework or, pottery or, playing the violin, something like that. But also, as we have gone in such excruciating detail into dating fucking sucks.
Mm-hmm.
Dating is so difficult. Dating is so onerous and time consuming. And like maybe she was able to, meet some people at a bar and they hit it off and that was like the end of it. Easy peasy. But to me, I'm like when you are dating, there is a very real aspect of dating which is lying. There's a very real aspect of dating which is exaggerating the things that you're good at to an even greater degree to make yourself seem more interesting and capable of a person. And it's only after you've been with someone for a while that you feel comfortable enough breaking down those barriers and be like, yeah, I did speech and debate, but I wasn't a national champion like I might have told you at some point. Um, to be clear, that's not ripped from Joel's life. I'm just throwing that out as an example. But yeah, like dating feels like not like a great way to understand yourself better just because there's so much deception, both externally but also internally. Right? You have to believe certain things about yourself that you're, an accomplished, interesting, charming person, which may be completely true, but also might be completely untrue. And you're just lying to yourself about, what you're worthy of, your potential, who you could reasonably expect is going to be interested in you, etc., etc. So again, not saying this didn't work for this person, but it just seems crazy to me that the steps necessary for this woman to actualize herself involve nearly blowing up her marriage and doing so for multiple years in a row before being like, maybe I should actually go to therapy to dig into these issues.
Well, she explains that in the beginning she had a really bad experience with her therapist where she was going to see a therapist for a couple of months. This was in her early 20s. And she had seen this therapist every week for 4 months. And one day she walks in her therapist's office, and her therapist walks up to her and goes, "Hi, I'm Dr. So and so. It's nice to meet you." And acts like they've never met before. And she's like, that just put me off of therapy forever. She's like, I spilled my guts to this woman. This woman and I like talked and found coping mechanisms and, chatted about my deepest, darkest secrets. And she's going to act like she doesn't know me. Like she found that very repulsive about the therapy experience, which was completely understandable. Like that sucks. Maybe look at your patient files before you go out and meet your next patient therapists. That's coming from me. I'm not a therapist. I don't know if you have time to do that, but think about that as a little tip and trick. But I don't know. Um I think that that's a completely understandable reason why she wasn't seeking therapy before. I'm not saying that this was the best way
Yeah.
to go about things, opening up her marriage and blowing up this portion of her marriage, her married life, but and they struggled for years. Like I haven't even started talking about the struggles that they went through for 10 plus years in order to get to a point where they were both comfortable being in an ethical non-monogamous relationship. And to me, it just seems like all of these things could have gone back to if they had simply communicated in the beginning and found ground rules in the beginning and not just slid things by each other, we wouldn't have this issue.
Hey,
But I
husband.
digress.
I feel we're having some issues in the bedroom. The way you keep calling me the C word while we're having sex. Maybe
No,
we
it was
should get a
right when he was
divorce.
orgasming. It was only when he was orgasming.
Again, not the thing I'd go to first, but sure. But yeah, husband, we're having issues. What if we just got a divorce? Oh, that sounds good. Awesome. Shake hands. They're done.
See, I think here's my perspective after reading her memoir. I think that there was a lot of great love that happened between her and her husband. I think from what she includes in this memoir, they have a very strong relationship. But the way that they go about the relationship is questionable to me. It doesn't involve, in this specific portion of their marriage, does involve a lot of communication. So it's just interesting to witness from a third party who's reading about their marriage. But yeah,
The expression I'm thinking of is post hoc ergo propter hoc. You remember your Latin? I'm bringing up Latin for
no,
the second time this episode.
not at
I used to
all.
be a Latin national champion. I don't know if you knew that.
Stop
Uh,
it.
so post hoc ergo propter hoc is an expression after this, therefore because of this. And it's often used with regards to logical fallacies, where you say something happened after another action, therefore it happened because of that action. And so, often people will say, well, Trump, ran this amazing campaign and that's why he won, the 2016 election. But that could be very untrue. It could be that Hillary Clinton ran a lousy campaign. It could be the influence of Russia. It could be, illegally stolen votes. It could be voter suppression, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. In the same way, I feel in this book, she's kind of like saying the end result was good, therefore all the stuff leading up to it was actually good because it allowed me to like solidify my relationship and make things better, when the reality could be the stuff leading up to it was actually just completely garbage, right? And like through like careful therapy and examination and couples counseling and all of that, they've come up with a narrative that is satisfactory to both of them but may not necessarily be intellectually honest, if that seems like understandable. She if you were to look at this from the outside for like 90% of what you've described so far, you'd be like, oh, she's just a bad person who doesn't care about like the feelings of others. But then in the last 10%, she's like, it turns out I actually had trauma and I wanted to feel loved. And we're like, oh, okay, that feels good. Again, not saying this can't be true. I'm just saying this feels like making the best of a bad situation and retroactively saying that stuff was actually good, guys. Checkmate.
See, I think it's interesting that you say that because I definitely would think that reading this, like you might have that perception of who she is based off of my summary of it, but reading the book, I'm like, okay, yeah, she's just freaking human. She's going through the motions of her marriage and her life and stuff, and she's struggling her way through it. I think that a large portion of why she decided to be in an ethical non-monogamous relationship was because her mother had also been in an ethical non-monogamous relationship, even though her mother defined it as an affair that her father had blessed. And because I don't think there was terminology back then, because her mother is in her
Barely terminology now, yeah.
in her 80s or something right now, so that was quite a bit ago when she was having this open relationship with her
You know
husband.
how the gay community has come up with all these like terms for like different types of men, they're like bears, otters,
Yeah.
right? I kind of think that like some clever biologist needs to look at animal like group arrangements and come up with clever terms for like different polygamous couples based off of like how animals mate. Some animals will mate for life, some animals will like have sex with the female and then leave, some animals will have sex with multiple females and spend time around the nest, etc., etc. This is a flamingo type of ethical non-monogamy, this is a penguin type of ethical non-monogamy, so on and so forth.
In parts of Florida, they use those floofy thingies they use to wash yourself. What do you call those? Those what do you call those? Those little sponge thingies they use in the shower?
Loofah.
Loofahs.
Loofah, there
Loofahs.
we go.
Yeah, so they use loofahs and they put them on their car, like on the antenna on their car, which I haven't seen a car with an antenna in a very long time, but besides that, and the color of the loofah is like what you're into and like if you're single and stuff like that. So maybe we
Huh.
should just go with like I'm a blue loofah or like I'm a white loofah.
See, all I know is that like bisexual, like not bisexual, swingers specifically will do pineapples, right? There's a lot of
Yeah,
pineapple imagery,
I think
and
it's
I'm
like
disappointed
upside
because
down pineapples.
yeah, I'm disappointed because I really like the image of a pineapple. The pineapple is an attractive fruit. I
It's
like
also
having depictions of the
the
pineapple in my
image
house.
it's also the image of of hospitality. Like it means hospitality. So a lot of people are like, "Oh, like I put
What's more
pineapples outside."
hospitable than have my wife
No, I think it's just funny. Actually, somebody gave me a pineapple for my 18th birthday. It's a good pineapple.
upside down or right side
No, it
up?
was like just a really good pineapple. It was like a real pineapple. So, I want to finish up the first part of this book series by mentioning the relationships that she has with her mother and how that kind of shaped her ethical non monogamous viewpoint. And I would like to mention that her mother at the beginning of the book was struggling with an unnamed illness that no one had really diagnosed. And so she's struggling with watching her mother slowly deteriorate. And she kind of opens up her mother to, okay, you had this relationship with this man, and when I was younger, and she kind of gets out of her that it was a it was ethical non-monogamy, but it was what it it was a way that her mother found that that there was an abundance of love in the world. And her mom kind of explains it as, I had this man that I loved. I also had your father, and I didn't understand the way that I was feeling. And the way that Molly, the writer of this book, explains it in the end of the book is she equates it to the feeling that she had right before she had her second son. She had her first son, and she was watching him sleep one night, and it was a couple like days before she was supposed to go into labor with her second son. And she's looking down at her first son. She's like, I don't know how I have enough room in my heart for both of my children. Like, I don't know if I can love someone else the way I love my first son. I don't know if I have enough love to give to both of them. And sure enough, a couple days later, her second son is born, and she has them together, and she's like, oh my God, there's so much love to go around. And equates that to the way that she views ethical non monogamy towards the end of the book, which I find interesting because it's a new sort of take on it that I sort of, um, my association with ethical non monogamy before reading this book was, okay, you had your primary, but you were looking for someone to have those, sexual experiences with on the side. And you weren't necessarily looking for somebody to have a relationship with. You were looking for someone to um, do butt stuff with because your wife doesn't like it, or go fishing with you on the weekends and then have sex in your boots. What do you call those? What do you call waders? Yeah,
Galoshes.
but that's how I viewed it. So it's an interesting take on ethical non-monogamy that I like didn't necessarily comprehend before reading this book, which I really appreciated taking out of this book because I feel like it brought a lot of good conversations because um me in my life, I have always viewed myself as a monogamous individual, but my partner has viewed himself in the past as a polygamous. That's what I was about to say. Thank you, Joel. A polyamorous person when it comes to relationships. So it brought up a lot of good conversations because we've never exactly come to an understanding of each other. Like he doesn't understand my monogamous viewpoint, and I don't understand his polyamorous viewpoint. And obviously, we're in a monogamous relationship now. We understand what monogamy means to us, but it was an interesting way for me to kind of meet him in the middle and understand better why he thought the way that he thought and how other people think. Because for the vast majority of my life, like I mentioned, I just thought this was a sexual thing. I didn't think that this was a way of having multiple relationships, sexual, emotional relationships, spiritual sometimes in the case of her mother. But I don't know. I really enjoyed reading this because it kind of broadened my horizons on the book, this idea as a whole.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, the way you're talking about it, I think makes a lot of sense. I came across a quote last week that I've been mulling over that I think is relevant here. Um, it's something along the lines of joy shared with another is double joy, pain shared with another is half pain. And there's this idea that, like, when you share good things that happened with other people, there's twice as much happiness in the world. And when you share your pain with someone, even if they can't solve your problem, the fact you're able to share it diluted it and made it like less weighing on you, right? It's why, therapy works. It's why venting your frustrations works. It's difficult to keep it all bottled up in your head. And in the same way, I think, you can apply this principle to a lot of, heterosexual relationships where, there's two people in a house and they primarily spend all their time with the other person and they may get along great, but there still might feel like there's a bit of confinement, right? That you can't, voice your opinions. You can't talk about stuff. You can't, explore different things because you know that there's, just certain things that your partner is going to shut down. And I think it makes a lot of sense that, people's first thought might be, well, it'd be great if I had another sex partner, or it'd be great if I had another relationship partner, and, just added onto the good stuff that I already have. And I think it would work great for a lot of people. But I also think it's similar to there's this phenomenon where a lot of straight men, when surveyed, say that they're interested in like sucking dick. And no one's really certain why this is, but like it seems that, because so much of like porn focuses on like big penises doing big penis things, that like there's this people's brains are linking together, sexual pleasure with big dicks, and they're like, well, I wonder what it'd be like to have one of those big dicks in my mouth or something, because they see, all these depictions of people, having lots of fun, apparently sucking big dicks. I don't know why I'm getting so explicit. I apologize. My point here is, I think some people might jump to a potentially wrong conclusion, where for some men it might be very gratifying to, have that opportunity, and for some men they'd be like, oh no, actually I don't like this at all. This is not, what I signed up for. This is not what I thought I was going to get out of it. Some people might say, I think ethical non-monogamy is going to fix my failing relationship. If only I had someone else to vent to. And then it just like ruins your relationship because you didn't communicate properly, and now everyone's upset and the boundaries are unclear and you don't know how to put the demon back in the bottle. Boy, this is a juicy topic.
Yeah. So I just want to wrap up on the note that it's opening up our horizons. It was a good book. Come back next week for part 2.
Come back part 2 next week for more of the book.
I get what you're saying,
More.
but like the
It's
order
a
that you
it's a
said that sentence didn't
memoir.
comprehend in my head. Um, Great. Any last messages before we go?
No, I think I've completely humiliated myself to the public, similarly to how this woman has exposed her failings to the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't really have anything else to close out on. Hey, this is the last episode before our 3-year anniversary, Naomi. It's going to be a real hootin' hanani. It's going to be a
Hoot and a
jamboree. We're
holler.
going to have musician. We're going to have a portrait artist who's going to be doing our portrait as we record this episode. We're going to have little goodie bags for all the people who listen to the episode. It's going to be
None
amazing.
of this is true.
I hope people show up next week and get ready for the time of their fucking lives.
I cannot believe that we've been doing this for 3 years. That boggles my mind.
Yeah. I used to
Wow.
have hair when we started. Now I'm completely
Stop.
bald. Yeah.
Okay. We hope you have a great week, everyone. Wear a condom. We love you very much because we believe that love surrounds you and love is everywhere. And there's enough love for everyone and everything. We love you.